Welcome to the StockManager.com studios. I'm your StockManager Brian Johnson. Entering a whole new week, we have a bunch of news behind us. We are through elections. We're through the Fed. We're through the job numbers. And now it's time to see which direction the markets will choose to go next. We are climbing to a very, very extreme high here. So once again, we will continue to just use caution. We've seen that being neutral to bullish has served us pretty well. We have been cautiously bullish, which has served us very well. And we have not gotten too overly bearish at any point, which has served us pretty well. So we will continue to keep that kind of a bias. You guys, you just have to watch the charts, listen to the charts. They will tell you which way to go next, and that's precisely what we're going to do again this week. Running into some overhead resistance here. I had to go back a ways to find where the overhead resistance was at, but I'm going to put it at or around 11,500. I like 11,600 after that. So we're going to continue to watch those areas coming into early next week. Monday's beginning of the week seems to have been very, very good to the bulls over the last umpteen months. Just a few of those have been, any kind of devastating down days, and not very many of them, I don't think, without going back and really doing my homework on it, have been any kind of major kind of drops on a Monday. So most of the time it's been very bullish on a Monday leading into a Tuesday. Any kind of bearish action tends to happen maybe a little later in the week. That might be exactly what we see here. So we're going to continue. We just broke up and over this 11,250 area. That will be what we are watching coming into next week. Oops, except I want to show you the daily again here. Here's the 60-minute on the Dow. As you can see, we broke that blue line, moved sideways, held, and it's working as very, very nice support up here. Any break back below about 11,400, of course, and there we are again holding the blue line, as we have been for quite a while. Here you see the 11,275, 250, actually 11,250-ish area, so that will be the place to watch on any kind of a drop to the downside. This is where the bulls will probably end up holding this level as we enter the new week. It's definitely what they're going to want to hold as best they can. On to the NASDAQ, you can see here on the 60-minute we have had the big gap up. Now this one didn't actually move up Thursday or Friday. We got the gap up Thursday or Friday. Now it's just continuing to move sideways, but it hasn't had any problems with their blue line. Everything's holding well. Channel looks good. Lines look good. It's holding support. Everything's working fine with the 2 days that it's had of just holding up towards the top. Now there is a gap there, something to hang on to. As we approach the next week, you want to watch when it gets back down here into the 2150, 2160 area, about 2160 or so, on any kind of a move to the downside in the NASDAQ. That should be or should act as some sort of support as we get into that area. Looking at the NASDAQ on a weekly, this has been a strong climb up. Now, if you're an Elliottian, it's very hard to see this as anything but a 1, 2, 3 wave up. And in that case, these 3 waves are hard to predict for a top. So we wait for the moves back to the downside with the levels that, of course, we've been talking about on the different indices as we move forward. This SPX got its huge move up, breaking blue, and holding now above this 1220-ish area. That will be a new line of support as it comes back down. That'll be the first line in the sand to watch on any move to the downside. If you look at the daily here on the SPX, you can see I drew in a bunch of lines for overhead, and really, if it wants to keep pushing to the upside, that 1250, 1260-ish area is the next level to be watching. Now, at any point, this thing could obviously turn around and go into some sort of a correction here, so you want to be very careful. But as it is, we are above that 1220 area, so looking very good for the SPX so far. From a weekly standpoint, too, we close now above the 1220 area. Once again, just more and more bullish action by the markets. So a close above here. We'll watch to see where this next week goes. I like to give the bears one chance, in this case, to kind of pull it back down over the course of this week. We'll see if that happens, if they can get that thing back below 1220. But any more subsequent closes above this 1220-ish area is going to only lend itself right into the bulls' hands. This big run up here is nothing that can't be obviously duplicated. Some of these wave threes we've seen in the past have lasted many, many weeks, and they've just continuously grinded their way upwards. So we could see more of that. Don't think that, it has to be this week or it has to be this week, because I'm sure there were people back here that were thinking from a bear side, it has to be this week and it has to be this week. Well, look at where we're at now. Just do what the charts are telling you, and that is to remain more to the bullish side. The VIX on a daily back down into this lower area, holding the blue line nice. We'll see this week if it breaks or if it holds, but it really doesn't matter as long as there isn't any kind of a major turn one way or the other in the VIX. This thing could hang out. Doesn't have to break this blue line, but it could hang out sideways to up a little bit, showing absolutely no fear within the markets, and that gives, of course, the markets plenty of room to continue to kind of grind their way to the upside. We have seen many days where the market moves up and the VIX doesn't really move anywhere, or the VIX is even up a little bit. We could see a little bit of that. So be curious to see this week if this blue line's going to hold and what happens if it manages to make itself back up into this upper area again. The weekly, same thing, no fear coming into the markets. We'll watch that as well. It's a good, bigger overall picture, but that 2350 area, now maybe the fear starts to come, but until that happens, there's certainly nothing to worry about here from the market standpoint. Apple on a 60 holding up very nicely. Up and over 320 is what you really want to watch coming into next week. Up and over 320, that's your area maybe to try. Another little long position again here in the in Apple. Now we could have seen this could have been some sort of a four wave back here, and if that's the case, you could have a 1, 2, 3. Maybe this is part of a 4. So don't be surprised if Apple tends to maybe it trickles back down here into this 312.50 area, potentially even a little bit lower, but there could be one last little spurt to the upside here left in Apple. Watching that for up over 320 for that indication. As you can see here, starting to flirt with the bottom side of that blue line right now, but nothing to worry about in Apple until we start to get more consistently back below around, probably I still really like below the 20. Now it's 308. So back below this area and then back below 300, and then of course 295 as we've been calling. Right back up to the top on a weekly as well. We'll see where that closes by the end of it. See if that brings us any indication whatsoever. FAS, pretty obvious what this thing's doing. Move up and consolidate. So any pushes up above this area give you, this looks like a pretty obvious triangle type of a 4. So it's hard to believe that this doesn't have at least a little bit of a push to the upside left in it here before it's all said and done with. So I would think that maybe above 27, any point past 27 though, that would complete that wave. I like this overhead resistance here, so I'd watch that very close, up around 28 on a further move to the upside. So now we have a very nice, what looks to be a 1, 2, 3 with a big triangle 4 and a 5 here. At any point now we have we have completed the wave, so it can do anything at this point. It's really up to the markets to make their decision, but we could see this thing slide up just a little bit more into that 28 area. FAZ then, of course, falling down. You can see it consolidating down here in what would be a little triangle or a low base formation. From a daily perspective, too, down below 1042 puts it well below some of its lows from way back here in April. Very bearish for the financials. Or well, not, I should say, for FAS on the financials. Financials themselves doing very well with a little help from, $600 billion from the Fed. Go back and look at some of the banks, and man, it's amazing. You can just see the pump come in. It was outstanding last week to watch some of those huge, huge moves. So now that we've broken this little triangle, I may keep these lines on here. It's really it's a useless formation now to me. The only thing I may use it for is if it tends to come back and go ahead and hold the bottom side of this line, then we might have something to use as a resistance point on any retest of this. So we might watch that, but otherwise the formation itself is broke. And that'll do it for today's video. So coming into tomorrow, guys, we're still just going to let the charts decide which way we're going to go. We are getting very stretched up here. I would think that we would see a little bit of a pullback here before Christmas hits. So over these next 2 weeks, watch very closely for the pullback. And then it's very common to, of course, start to slide, for the markets to slide up into Christmas. Seems to be the direction they typically go. Not always, but almost always like to go that way. People get very optimistic coming into Christmas. The markets usually reflect that. So keep that in mind as we push forward into the beginning of the week, that a pullback should be coming, I would think, here within the next, if we don't see it this week, I think it'll be next week. So watch that closely. We'll see you again tomorrow night. Bye.